Hey everyone, in today's video we're going to see how to search through a list view in Flutter. So here we have the project from our last video where we basically pulled the JSON from the web and displayed it in a list view format with all these fancy cars and stuff. So on that video I got a comment where someone was asking how to search a list view, so I think it's best for me just to do a video tutorial showing how to do it. So the first thing we need to do is add a text field on top over here, which is going to serve as a search box, and then whenever something is changed in that search box, we're going to go through the list and see if any of the node titles contain the text we're trying to search, and then we're going to display the results. So first of all, let me extract this card widget into its own function so we don't clutter up this code too much. Let's just call the function list item and we'll pass in the index. Okay, and now we have this function and we're just going to call it over here, say index and return. Okay, so since I'm going to adding our text field into the list view directly, in order for our text field to scroll together with our list items, I'm going to have to set the item count to be nodes length +1 and say that when I'm returning the list item, I return the list item -1 because the first element I'm going to render is going to be the search bar. So let's check if we're rendering the first item or any other items. If we're rendering the first item, then we're going to return a search text field, which we're going to build in a separate function over here. And if we're not, we're just going to return our standard list view. Okay, so here I wrote the logic for this. If you're not familiar with this kind of syntax, it appears in a lot of programming languages. So this basically checks if the index is 0, it executes everything after the question mark. And if this is not true, then it executes everything after this colon. So what we're doing here, we are checking if the index is 0. If it is, then we are returning a search bar, and if it's not 0, then we're returning the list item. And you can notice here I have an empty search bar function, and now I'll just write the text field widget. Okay, and now I wrote this text field thing. We have some hint text to say that this is a search text field, and I added some padding to make this look a little bit nicer. And when I save the code, this should automatically reload, and that's it. Okay, and now let's implement the onChanged function in our text field. And our onChanged function takes one parameter, and that's text. And here we'll do the magic for displaying what is in search over here. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is change this text to be lowercase, because I want, when I search for node 1 with a lowercase n, to still display me the node 1 even though it's uppercase. I think it's a better practice, but it really depends on your preference and your app requirements. So let me just make this text lowercase. Okay, and now we should go through the nodes list and remove any nodes that don't match our search query. So when I'm searching for something, I'm going to make it to search by title. So if I type in 2, I want it to display me the node 2. And if I just type in content, it shouldn't display me anything because none of these titles contain content. So that's just how I'm going to do it over here, but as I said, it really depends on what you want to do with your app. Okay, and now the way we're going to implement the filtering logic is using the where method from the list class. So the where method basically goes through the whole list and filters it based on the conditions you give it in the parameter. So it's pretty difficult to explain like this, so I'm just going to try to implement this and then I'm going to explain it step by step. So because we're going to be changing the state of our widget, I'm going to use the setState method. Okay, and now it's time to write our filtering logic. Okay, and now we have our filtering logic. So we go through each and every one of our nodes and we set this node title variable to be the lowercase variation of our title in order to make this not be case sensitive, and we return node title that contains our text which is inputted in our search query. So the thing here is our where method goes through each and every one of our nodes, and wherever our lambda function returns true, it includes it in a new list. And if it does not pass for some reason, it does not include it. So if I type in node 1, it went through every node over here and checked if node 1, which is this title, contains our text which is here note 1, and since that did return true, it included it in the new list. And then it went to the second note, and that note's title is note 2, and since note 2 text does not contain note 1, it didn't include it. That was repeated for every single note in our list, and we just ended up with one note. But now there's a big problem. What happens when I remove our search query? Only our note 1 is displayed, and that's because when we do this, when we set our notes to be the filtered version of basically itself, it erases all the notes that are not in the initial search query from the list. And the way we're going to fix it is we're going to create a new list which is going to be called notes for display. And our notes for display is going to serve as the filtered down version of our notes list. And our notes list is going to keep track of all of the notes that were initially pulled from the fake API. So we need to set our notes for display to be initially, when we're using this fetch notes, then notes.addAll, we're going to set notes for display is equal to notes, so that initially our notes for display basically displays all the notes that are there. And now we need to make our list items use our notes for display and not our notes. So I think it uses it only in these two places. Save this, I think this should all work. Oh, no, there's a problem. We also need to set it to be notes for display.length for our list view. And when I save this, this is maybe going to work, but probably not, because I have to restart the whole app. And what we're going to do in our onChanged method is not going to set all the notes. It's not going to set the notes property, but notes for display. And now when I save this and maybe reload the whole app, it loaded up all the notes again for us. And now if I type in the search note 1 or note 2, it displays a note 2, and when I delete all of this, it returns all of our notes. And this is because we have a property that tracks all the notes, and we have a property that tracks filtered notes. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you enjoyed it, like the video, subscribe to the channel. This project is going to be up on GitHub, so I have a link for that in the description for you, and that's pretty much it. I'll see you next time.